now our host, Stephen Lee Morris.
Zharia ONeal grew up in the British Virgin Islands. She was educated in the United States. She attended the University of Southern California as an undergraduate and was part of and received, or she is still in the MFA program for playwriting at the University of Southern California. Zharia is here to talk about how she came into playwriting, how she came to the United States, how she came to USC, and whether playwriting can actually be taught. And if it can, how they attempt to do that at the University of Southern California. Zharia ONeal, welcome to Animal Farm.
Hi, thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. You're currently in the third year of the MFA playwriting program at USC, which begs the question. Well, it begs a couple of questions, like why? Why are you a playwright? And why USC? And do playwrights actually need to be trained in MFA programs, or can they just be I mean, what is this? What is this for? Also, to mention, you have served as literary associate for Playwrights Arena. That's something else you've been doing. So we can chat a little bit about that as well. But let's start at the beginning. Yeah. What made you choose to not only become a playwright, but to dedicate your higher education to an art form that is probably among the most ludicrous professions in the world?
Talk us through your psychosis.
My pleasure, anytime.
Well, when I first had my psychotic break,
yeah.
Playwriting actually found me, I think, in the only way that playwriting can find someone. I always find that, like, I never hear normal stories about people getting into playwriting because it's not to say like it's not for normal people, but like, the appeal is not traditional. So me coming from the British Virgin Islands, I have raised by two immigrant parents who are very much like, okay, like doctor, lawyer, like something of means in that way. But I was always really interested in writing. And in undergrad at USC, I was getting a double major in public relations, which I really loved, and also narrative studies, which was like the kind of like study of storytelling across cultures and mediums. Really great. But I didn't think that I was going to do anything with that second major. It was just something I was really passionate about. And I thought there's no way that I could get related in this. But I also wanted a minor in like early childhood education. And while I was like at an internship over the summer, ready to register for my classes for my junior year, I found that all of the classes for my minor were just canceled spontaneously. So I was like, okay, I need to find another 4 credits, but I don't want to take class on a Friday. So the only class that was available was Playwriting 1 with Oliver Mayer. And I was like,
so it was like last choice. It was like third choice. It was total expedience.
Yeah, I was like, I want to take Friday classes. This is a nice Tuesday class. Playwriting seems cool. I have no idea what I'm doing. And then like the bug bit me. Like I started taking the class and I was like, I really like this. But of course, like, you shove that away because you're like, theater doesn't, no, absolutely not. This is not, I can't be a playwright. Like this makes no sense. This is just something that I can enjoy. And in my junior year, Oliver was like, you should think about grad school. And I was like, oh, I'll apply, but like, I'm going to go into public relations. I'm going to go to an agency immediately after school. Like I'll apply, but I don't know. We'll see if I get in. Mm-hmm. So I applied and I did get in, but my next thing was like, a mentor of mine made me promise. He's like, tell me you're not going to go to arts graduate school without a scholarship. You cannot.
Yeah.
You cannot. He was like, I don't want you to go, period. Because he was a graduate of Columbia. And he was like, I don't want you to go at all. But if you're going to go, if I'm going to write this recommendation for you, do not pay for a single cent of it.
So what was it was a him, right? Is that correct? Your mentor? What was the reason that he was so opposed to the idea of doing higher education in, I guess you would say, the arts, let alone playwriting?
So he had gotten an MFA in fiction, and he is an extremely talented writer, extremely successful, but he's of the mind, as a lot of people are, that like it's a lot of money for some skills that you may be able to learn outside of the program. And we're going to talk about that later. But he was just looking out for me because here I was barely in my 20s, announcing that I wanted to spend the next 3 years of my life like in debt. And he was very worried, but he was, I will write you a recommendation, but please tell me that you're going to try to at least get a scholarship, that you won't consider unless you have at least some of it covered. And USC thankfully gave me a fellowship. And I kind of took that as a sign of like, I mean, it's free. It's free. I love playwriting. It might be insane, but I want to be good at it. So I started the program. And now 3 years in, like I mean, I can't say that I don't know what would have happened if I wouldn't have done it. I probably would have started as like an assistant or coordinator at some like PR firm, but I think I would have been miserable.
Interesting.
Yeah, at least some form of creation in my life. I know it was like, as it sounds, like theater is actually, I think, one of the coolest things that we do as human beings. And I think to just watch from the sidelines, which I wouldn't have been able to afford to do anyway, because theater is expensive, to just watch from the sidelines would be very, very sad.
What do they do at USC in terms of the training of a playwright? Do they just throw you to the wolves and say, hey, write a play, we'll get some actors, we'll do them? Are they giving you instruction? No, there is a dramatic arc and it needs to be, the tension needs to get ever higher, or just hear voices in your head and just write them down, then we'll fix them later. I mean, is there an approach, or how does a playwriting education actually work? Because I think for every 10 playwrights, there are 10 different ways of writing a play.
Yeah. And I think that's exactly right. But that's one of the things we enjoy about the program, because at first I thought that I was going in and it was going to be very much like what you were describing, like artsy fartsy, throw your thoughts at the wall and just blah, blah, blah. So I thought I was going to become like the coolest, most pretentious asshole ever in this program. But I think, so Dr. VELINA HASU Houston started the program. When she saw that like there weren't, from my understanding, she saw that there wasn't like really a playwriting program at USC, wasn't a dramatic writing program. So the way that it's structured over the 3 years is that we have a very small faculty. So it's PAULA CIZMAR, Oliver Mayer, Dr. VELINA HASU Houston, and then a bunch of amazing adjunct faculty. But everybody has their own approach to playwriting. So we take dramatic writing studio classes every semester where we're supposed to compose a new play. Then we take a rewriting class each semester when we're supposed to work on rewriting pages. And then depending on which semester you're in and which year, you could be taking an adaptation class. You could be taking a screenwriting class in the cinema school. You could be taking a creating character class. Or like one of my favorites was Rodney Toe's class, which was like across mediums, kind of like how to create content. So one thing that like I really appreciated about the program was that depending on who you have, you get a completely new perspective on playwriting. And you really kind of key into certain people, you know, like there's like certain that you're like, okay, you know what? I'm really jamming with this person. I think that there's been like a lot of talk about our cinema classes because because like you take the cinema classes and then it's like you're like, oh, this is where the people are going to be making money. Okay. I think that you guys will be making money.
Yeah.
But
they do. I'm shocked. They don't do that with the playwrights.
So we take screenwriting classes.
No, I mean, nobody believes that you're going to be making a lot of money writing plays.
The weirdest thing, people have trouble believing that playwrights can be multi-millionaires. Often are, you know?
Well, somebody needs to spread the word.
Yes.
About that gaping falsehood out there in the world. I'd like to go back a little bit to your upbringing in the British Virgin Islands and how you got to study at USC as an undergraduate. And theoretically, your eyes were set on becoming a marketing or public relations person.
Yeah. And up until my first year of grad school, the summer before grad school, I had an internship with an advertising company that did Broadway shows. And I still very much like, even throughout these years, if I'm looking for a little money on the side, I will take on like a consulting gig, or I'll do like a couple of things. I still like PR. It's just like, oddly, I've chosen playwriting.
Yeah.
You're making me realize that I'm not okay, Steve.
I'm sorry. Well, we're just my deep apologies for even having this interview. It wasn't meant to completely turn your life upside down, but apparently it's having that effect. So, so what's it? You're in the third and final year, correct, at USC. So, what are you thinking as a path forward? Are you going to try to connect yourself up with a regional theater circuit? Are you just going to go independent? Are you going to do public relations as a career, and then in order to have some kind of living that pays for the playwriting? How is in your head? What do you see for yourself in the next couple of years? After your USC is behind you?
Yeah, I think like, so theater, I've actually grown to love putting theater on as well as like writing it. I love like the process of creating shows. And I think like in my second year, COVID was, we know what COVID was for theater, but in a weird way, it propelled me forward. So like everybody, because of COVID, everybody was doing remote work. And Playwrights Arena had started doing all of these Zoom readings, and they were really just looking for some, like John and JC Bates, the literary manager at the time, were just looking for folks to help with like letting people into a Zoom room, because we're all new to Zoom at this point.
Yeah.
And that's how I got started with them. Like I started doing the Zoom reading. I started helping out with that. Then I became literary associate. And then like I became associate literary manager. And once that happened, I started to realize like I started making more connections and like talking to people over here and joining like this reading committee and starting to like really get involved in theater on the other side.
Yes.
And I really enjoyed it. I think because I know a lot of people talk about like making a difference, but like on the literary side, I think as a playwright, there's nothing more refreshing than being able to like hang out with playwrights like on the literary side, to see the work that people are putting in, to like watch what they're developing. And that's something that I'm not ready to let go of after USC. So I do think that like, it's looking like right now, I'm going to leave and be involved in a lot of different projects on the theater administration side. I don't think right now, I don't think there's going to be one concrete position that I'm going to stay in and not do anything else, because I like to do lots of stuff at once.
Yeah.
So I would love to be like on a bunch of different reading committees. I would love to like be on theater admin for this theater and for this group, and like work as a dramaturg. I've been doing that a lot, work as a dramaturg for a couple of other plays. So I think I'm going to be doing like a little fruit basket of theater.
Got you. Like a cornucopia of
yes,
something like that.
If I end up eating beans on the floor of my apartment, then we will pick up a couple of PR freelance gigs too. Got
it. I'm not sure I've got a clear sense yet, unless I missed it, but I don't think you actually addressed how you left the British Virgin Islands. How did that happen?
Yeah. So I was born and raised there, and my parents wanted to complete some advanced education in the United States, because we have a community college there where you can earn an associate's degree. But if you want a bachelor's or anything higher than that, you need to go elsewhere. So my parents had already gotten their bachelor's at like other places in the Caribbean, and they wanted to complete master's degrees. So they decided that they were going to try their hand, that we're going to come up to the US for like 2 years. Both of them would get their master's. They'd bring the children, me and my sister. And then—
And how old were you at this time?
I was 6.
Okay.
So they were going to bring me and my sister and come back down, and that would be that. But once we came to the US, I found that like my parents quickly discovered that the education system here was better able to kind of foster like the skills that I had, which they weren't aware of. The plan was not for me and my sister to get an education in the US. The plan was for them to get an education, us to go back home.
That's interesting. This is interesting.
Yeah, they were not trying to stay here. It was not the kind of like American dream we can make. They were not of that mindset. They were like, we want to go back home.
As you mentioned, it sounds like they were quite established there as career professionals. Yeah.
In the British Virgin Islands, they were. So they were not trying to move to the US. What ended up happening though, is that both my sister and I became really well adjusted in the schools that we were in.
Yeah.
So it was sort of like, okay, like I guess we'll do this. So my sister ended up going to college at Hofstra. And at that point, my mother had already left to go back to the British Virgin Islands. So it was just me and my dad, like living together with me going to school, basically just waiting for me to get to a certain point. Yeah. And then when I graduated high school and I got into USC, my dad went back home.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
So I am super grateful to them because they changed their entire life plan. Like I would always be grateful to them, but it would be one thing if they were like, we want this American dream, but that was not what they wanted.
Yeah.
It happened that like their kid was doing really well in American schools and they were like, well, it would be a disservice to stop now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it's a very interesting story. And the British Virgin Islands have informed a couple of your plays. You're in the Play LA program that's administered by the Humanities Foundation or I should say the Humanities Prize. And it's an interesting background that we don't hear much of. Yeah. I think that certainly ups your value as a playwright and as a writer in general, simply because you have narratives that we're not familiar with, and that's a great thing. Well, we look forward to seeing your plays on the boards one day. If such a thing is possible in California anymore, I think it is, but it's just a little more difficult than it used to be. But we look forward to that. And Zharia ONeal, I thank you for joining us.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Next week, we're joined by Andrew Thatcher. He's a performer, and his adaptation of Jonathan Livingston Seagull, the book by Richard Bach, is currently being performed at Atwater Village Theatre through March 27th.
If you enjoy Animal Farm, please support us on Patreon.